What's going on, family? Is it me or does Saturday have a different vibe for the Breaking Brown Book Club? Fam, we're going to get into it. Hit that like button while you're here, but we're going to get right into it. And we're just going to do a quick recap. The phones are open. If you do not know, the phones are open. I opened them up before I came on. That is the number. So the phones are open. Let me see how many. We still got like 2 lines open. So if you get there, if you get there quick enough. Anyway, quick recap for those of you who were not here, for book club part 1. Now we are reading They Were Her Property. Now let me tell you, for those of you who were not here, did not avail yourself, or you fell asleep, you didn't have time, we learned a few different things. We had some stuff. Let me see if I can find this right here. We had some things that we learned. Some things that we discussed during the first Breaking Brown Book Club episode. So during the first episode, we discovered that something that we have always said, that wealth is held in families, not gender. And that 40% of the slave owners were actually white women. So this put a whole thing into what we have been told in terms of white men being the only ones who are the abusers of ADOS, and everybody else is but everybody else is squashed in and shoehorned into this minority category. That's some of what we learned. And we learned about the cruelties, right? We learned about the cruelties of said women, and how they were just as, like, cruelty isn't a genderized thing either. Like, what do you know? White women were really cruel. Some were better than others, but they could be just as cruel. Let's say they could be had the capacity to be just as cruel as white male slave masters, or more so, right? Learn that. Then we learn how they lost, like when they were trying to run around. They were running around and trying to refugee away when the Union soldiers came and hide little niglet children under beds and stuff. They were doing all that stuff that they were doing. We learned how much money they made, and how they had really kind of they took slavery into speculation. And there was one white woman who was allegedly selling slaves as good slaves who had disabilities or weren't necessarily all the way healthy. We talked about a lot of stuff on the first episode. We talked about how this was. One of the things about this book is how it was always like certain stuff was hidden from historical record. And so each chapter was like the author saying, like, yeah, you said it wasn't this way, but it's this way. So that is, let me see if I missed anything to recap. I want to do my recap good. Honestly, this could be like I said this last time, but this needs to be like a series where we go through each chapter as part of a series. You know, you had the female merchants. And one of the things we didn't mention last night is how many of these businesses were near where they sold slaves, and women had businesses there too, to catering to people who sell slaves. So it wasn't just like the slave owners themselves. They had businesses near here to get the money from that. So you got the money from that, and then you shoehorn yourself into a group of ADOS. As if we're all the same, the flattening of oppression. So for all of those who were here and everything, if I missed anything, when we go to the calls, and I'm about to go to the calls now because this show is in large part because we didn't finish the discussion, because there were a lot of people who wanted to have a word and have something to say about the book who didn't have a chance to do it last time. So we're going to head to the phones and we're going to continue that discussion. That was a recap. And one thing I want to say about the recap, I'm wordy, I know, but one thing I want to say about the recap is this. I want to just use this book to everybody who says, I'm tired of slave movies. I'm tired of hearing about slavery. Can we move on? There's a reason why the Jewish community, I don't like even comparing ourselves to them because it's not the same. It's like apples and oranges a lot of the way. But there's a reason why they want Holocaust movies, and they want movies that showcase what they went through. Because it really highlights, like, if you can't say never again and you still have people who don't understand what you went through. Never again, you have to make sure everybody understands that. And it's one thing not to have the wealth to do it. We understand that we don't have the wealth for cinema and movie houses and all that stuff. That's one part of it, right? The other part of it is this. We don't have the will for that. We don't want to see that. We don't want to see that history. And I think you have to kind of understand that history is a history of perseverance, and it's a history of something to be proud of. It's not a history of something to be embarrassed about. I say this all the time, but I'll say it again. We're not supposed to be here. We were supposed to be a commodity and we died off or whatever. And we have fought and scrappled our way here. And I think that history, that lineage, that legacy is something to be celebrated. Now I'm going to go to the calls, see what everybody else has to say. I am going first. I'm going to 510. 510, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, good evening, Sister Yvette. How are you? Happy
Pretty good.
New Year.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. My name is Daryl. I'm calling from Chicago.
Okay.
And I just want to highlight two passages.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for writing. Thank you for recommending this book. It was illuminating beyond measure. The first passage starts in the epilogue at the bottom of page 201.
Okay.
In writing these accounts, former slave-owning women offered three primary reasons, and it goes on to the first full paragraph on page 202. I don't want to go into that, but I want to thank the author for stressing the main factors these women engaged in this activity, and it was all driven by abject greed and the desire to accumulate wealth. The next passage is on page 205 in the epilogue, and it's the last paragraph. Former slave-owning women's deeper and more complex investments in slavery helped explain why, in the years following the Civil War, they helped construct the South's system of racial segregation, a system premised, as was slavery, upon white supremacy and black oppression. And she goes on to create the line that goes from slavery through Jim Crow, through redlining till today. And so I cannot, for me, the grind that you and Tone put on educating our people about our story and our lineage is not something to be taken for granted. And it just pains me to see how so many of us reject this history and this education, and in so doing, prevent us from moving forward. I want to say, give a big shout out to the callers on Thursday night. Y'all were on point with your comments. You caught some things that I didn't. Thank you so much. And as always, Yvette, my recommendations for the next book, I agree with the brother from Brooklyn who says we should read The Half Has Never Been Told.
Oh, that's
My other two are American Nations by Colin Woodard, because it explains the different nations inside the country that could probably help our chapters better function once they realize the environments in which they're trying to grow and develop. And
what's the name of it? I'm sorry, fam. I didn't catch that second name.
Say it again.
I didn't catch the second name. American Nations, you said?
Yeah, American Nations by Colin Woodard. Fascinating book. And my third recommendation is Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. And his whole treatise is about how racial progress is followed shortly by evolved racism. And what's crazy about that book is there are certain names that come up in colonial history that we've already talked and read about in American slavery and American freedom, and how these 3 or 4 names could so impact the people for 400 years is just flat out inconceivable to me. But thank you for this book. Thank you for everything you've done. You've changed my life since I've been following you for the last 6 years. So keep it up, sister. I'm in the fight with you, and have a good night.
Appreciate it. Thank you, fam. I sure do appreciate it. Did anybody hear the author of Stamped from the Beginning said something about ADOS? I don't know. I heard it was an article or something. I didn't get a chance to read it. Let me know, because I'm not sure if it was negative or positive, and I just want to know. I like to correct people, but I remember getting that in my DM, and I can't remember like what was the context of it, of what was said. Anyway, fam, let me just say one thing about what the caller just said. One of the beautiful things about this moment is all of the book recommendations that I have gotten in terms of the book club. Like, this recommendation came from a Chicago teacher who emailed me and said, this is the next book. It didn't come from me. And I said, okay. I looked it up and I said, yeah, this looks like something we should read. Didn't come from me. So the book recommendations that I'm getting, just the amount of ADOS who are like, this book. Come on, this book is amazing. So I just wanted to say that before I go to my next call. So I am going to the next call now. 310, what's your name? What's on your mind? You there, 310? Hello, 310, are you there? 310. Okay, gotta go. I am going now. I'm going now to 937. 937, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? Is everybody, what is going on?
Hello?
Hey, what's going on, 937?
Hi, my name is Cynthia.
Hey, Cynthia, what's going on?
Oh, okay, I'm from Dayton, Ohio. Thank you so much. I didn't know if I was going to get through it. This book has been, I've not finished reading it. It is really deep. But one thing that I have noticed about this book is that I don't understand how white women received affirmative action. I'm looking at page, earlier part in here about how the white women had accompanied her husband to go and still slave or still free people, and that was really bothersome. So all I just wanted to say is this book is really good for political education, and I thank you for really having these book clubs, because this is the first time that I really participated in it. And that's all I
Good for you. Good for you, fam. Count that as an achievement. Thank you, fam.
Thank you.
I absolutely appreciate you calling in. I thank you. And I think this is one of the things we have to start counting as small achievements too. Like if you read a good book, that's an achievement. People want like really huge stuff to happen at one time. Well, Yvette, I want this really big thing to happen, and I don't understand why we haven't just taken over Congress and all this stuff in this small amount of time. No, you read a good book. You have anchored yourself in political education, and we got to keep doing it. And then that's something you're going to pass on to your kids in terms of generational. The next generation is better because of this one book that you read, and like a habit that you're forming of reading and doing the work. One of the problems that we've always had as a group is that, and MLK said, and he was right, he wasn't wrong, that there were not enough of us willing to do the work. We'll show up to listen to people pound their chests and talk tough, but doing the work is another thing. And one of the things that I salute y'all for is showing up and doing the work. There's a reason why these kinds of book club shows have less viewership than the other shows, because everybody isn't willing to do the work. The true soldiers do the work. So I'm going to the next call. I'm going to 818. 818, what is your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, this is Dana calling from Los Angeles.
Hey, Dana, what's going on?
This is the first book that I've been able to get through, and this was a great read. What I realized reading this book is that the duplicitous, complicit nature of the white woman has been exposed. And as Americans in this country, we've been lied to.
Okay.
In no movies, from Roots to Django, have we been told that white women were slave owners.
That's true.
And it's always been about money. It's always been about money, from slavery to, all of the prisons in California that undergird their economy with black labor. And so reading this book, I saw that from all the atrocious, harmful depravity of the white woman, and it's just revealed. I've worked in corporate America most of my career, and I've seen the complicit nature of the white woman, and it's always about money. Let me tell you this. My great-grandmother, lived to, I believe, 110, and she died in 2000.
Okay.
And she remembered the names of her parents were Shep and Mariah.
Okay.
And they had to be born as slaves. And, in 1865, received freedom, or whatever the case may be, through emancipation. And I just want to say that they have a great-great-granddaughter that lives in 2020 that's coming for their due, for their claim. I'm here to make sure that they receive it. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, fam. You are worthy. I mean, I think we
Thank
have
you,
to be.
Yvette.
Thank you. I think that was a great call, and I think we all have to forget about all the stuff that the television tells you to do, or tells you to want, or tells you to consume. No, you got to be worthy. And in terms of worthy, well, what's your definition of worthy? Worthy of the ancestors. What they endured in the fight they fought. You have to be worthy. Like, prove yourself worthy. Because you're here, you say, well, you know, we know what's going on in Parchment. We know all of that. We know what we're going on in terms of economics. But we still have something that they didn't have. We're sitting here, hopefully. We have people who are homeless who are watching this. We have people who are going through all kinds of things. But a lot of us are seeing this broadcast on a laptop, on a computer, on a phone. We have access to some information. And I think we should use that information to advocate for ourselves with the level of specificity that we have never done before. I think that's what we should do. So let me get to the next call. I'm going to 470. 470, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm calling from Georgia.
Hey, Catherine.
I have a couple of points. The first one was going back to where you said we were not supposed to be here. And at the beginning of the book, I listened to it on audio.
Okay.
But at the beginning of the book, it talks about infertility and how infertility was so bad for enslaved women.
Malnutrition.
And until they started seeing the value of them having babies. And the second point is about state-sanctioned violence, how the southern states had laws about punishments that a slave had to receive, such as if they ran away the first time they got 40 lashes in public. I think the next one was they had to lose a limb. And I think they had a couple more, and then the fifth time they were to, it was death. And my third one is about how hard Lincoln fought for slavery. I didn't know that he fought so hard and went through, had more than one speech on slavery because his goal was to keep the Union together. And I was discussing with my daughter, and she was saying, yeah, freeing the slaves was a punishment to the southern states because he wanted to cripple their economy so that they would have to stay in the Union. That's from my daughter from one of her classes that she took. But I didn't know that either. And how one point in the book it said children and adults punished the slaves. They beat the slaves. And it said no matter how small the child was or how large, they would till they drew blood. Yeah. And then my last point is about drivers. That, to me, that was kind of significant to me because that brings me to today. The men, he said that he always hired a driver to whip his slave. And a driver was a black man that was hired to whip them.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact words that she used, but she said so that black people wouldn't associate the beating with the white person. So, and that's me paraphrasing how I got what I took out of what she said, because she said in so many words. But those were the things that I took out of the book.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate you reading the book, and I appreciate you calling in.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
And I have let me just say a couple, and I want to say a couple of words about what the caller just said too. Hold on one second. Okay, you know the funniest thing is Andrew Johnson, not Andrew Jackson. Andrew Johnson, in terms of Lincoln was basically kind of saying, I'm gonna do anything to protect the Union. I don't care if it means keeping slavery, and I don't care if it means whatever. When you think about, I just want you to think about this as a thought experiment. When you think about how white America is chasing the white vote right now, doesn't it look the same? It looks like, well, we can't help ADOS. We can't help ADOS because it might upset. It could very well upset the, white America to some extent. We have purple states, we have red states, and some people we're trying to flip from red to purple, whatever. We even have leftists who might not feel that, right? And we've seen that. And so you still see this whole thing now of like, I don't want to, listen, black people, you can't get what you deserve because it might upset white people. And that's the same thing that you got with like Andrew Johnson after Lincoln got assassinated. And before Lincoln, he was still trying to do the whole thing. Well, in terms of the orders he gave, there's something here about him giving an order, and then there's other stuff in here about how he didn't want to upset or make Confederates think they were going to lose their property. You still have that same thing to me. Like America is still moving in that direction, in that capacity, saying, yeah, we're not going to do anything because it might upset swaths of white America. And Johnson did, like, if there had been a redistribution of wealth from the Confederates to ADOS, you'd be looking at a different world right now. I wouldn't have a show because I wouldn't need to have a show. We would all be living our lives. But Lincoln doesn't get enough blame to me for like his VP. But that's a whole nother conversation. I'm going to my next call. 510. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette. This is Kevin calling from San Leandro, California. How you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Real good, real good. Just want to say I've been following you since day one. Read
Oh,
all 5
thank
books.
you. Day one is.
Thank you. You have changed my life, and I just had a birthday on the 23rd. I turned 58, so I'm a young boomer.
Okay.
And just want to say you have just turned me all the way around.
Oh, appreciate you.
But I just want to holler out a few spots.
Okay.
Page 164 at the top. There's a line referring to white women. For them, the value ascribed to the people they owned and the labor those people performed constituted their only means of survival. And when I read that, I thought about what you and Antonio always say about we are the gasoline that makes this whole thing run.
Yeah.
And towards the end, it says, at the end of that paragraph, it says, by pleading with men who held the strongest positions of power, these women sought to stave off such an outcome or their financial ruin, which is another point that you guys always make about social capital.
Mm-hmm.
And they're reaching to their friends in high places to stave off that financial ruin.
Yep.
The second section is page 192. This is the first full paragraph. About the fourth line in, it says, often, meaning white women, they often embraced the argument Grace Brown Elmore made that the Negro as a hireling will never answer, and like her, scorn paid black labor. So they denigrate the black labor, and then further down in the same paragraph, they talk about how bitterly disappointed they were when they started hiring white people, and how white people just couldn't do it the way black people could, that we were so efficient. And at the end of that paragraph, it says, when she hired an Irish woman as a servant, she learned that the woman was incapable of performing any of her assigned tasks efficiently.
Ain't that something?
And I'm sorry?
I said, ain't that something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to leave you with this one. This is the most satisfying part, was 194, the middle, all the way to 195. And I'm just going to surmise it by saying these white women were facing financial ruin, and they had to come begging the people that they formerly owned and enslaved. And you always say this, and I know it's true, is that we are good people. We could have behaved a different way.
Sure could have.
And of course, part of it was, we would have been destroyed if we had gotten ugly with them. But we were decent with them and gave them shoes and clothing and so forth because we had some love for them, even though they enslaved us. And once again, it just shows our humanity. But that's all I had for you.
You're right, fam. Thank you so much, fam. I appreciate you calling in. Yeah. Like,
Thank
I don't even know
Have a
why,
good night. Bye-bye.
People want to be like, we can be vicious. We can be, why? We have to, being here has made us we've had to work together as a collective minority of 14% and really less than that. And you talk about just ADOS and the people who were here then. Like, do you know how hard you got to go from that to like being even if you had wealth, to being a shark? Like, you have to reinvent your whole self in less than a lifetime. That's a lot. But anyway, fam, let me go to the next caller because I want to make sure I get everybody in. I am going to 224. 224, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? What's going on, 224? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey, how you going today?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm sorry. I was sitting there playing my video game and I got sidetracked.
What's on your mind?
After reading this book, my name is JD. I'm calling out of Houston, Texas. I went to the conference. I was a guy in the zombie
Thank
stuff
you.
or whatever. I had a great time. Didn't get a chance to meet you, but I'll meet you next time for sure.
Okay,
I was too tired.
absolutely, for
I couldn't
sure.
wait around. Everybody wanted to see you, and I was just too tired. But I want to thank you for. I've been following you for like 3-4 years now, and everything you've been saying, I take it in. I take it to heart. But after reading this book, it just locked it in for me. Because you and Tone always say wealth is held in families. And after reading this book, I came to realize you know, it looked like the victim of the system, but white women were propped up by strong white men, strong families. And they were truly never oppressed.
Well, not in the same, and let me just say this, not in the same way we were oppressed. Like, your argument is with your husband. You say, white men treat us wrong. Well, that's your husband, your father, your brother, and say, well, I'm in a bottom income, so I don't get to talk to those people. That's still white America. That's still, like, we don't have any access to none of them people. But go ahead, fam. I'm sorry.
No, and absolutely. So when I say never oppressed, I mean in the way that we were.
Absolutely.
Where we can even, in a way that we can even have some type of kinship or some type of sameness in our conversation. We're not speaking the same language.
Absolutely.
So with with the brutality and with the nuances and with the way they were finessing the system, they were moving. They were being very strategic. Even though they couldn't move as a white man, they still were able to maximize their position with their families.
Yeah.
And in ways that also that. Go ahead.
No, I said yeah, and that one thing you go back to is that in a lot of instances they were bossing around their family, like they were bossing around the white men in their family.
Oh my God, they're bossing around their families, and not only were they bossing around their families, they were also leasing it out to men that didn't know, but the men took the job serious enough to hold it to a high esteem, to where they were accounting for everything as if it was a man.
Yep.
They were calling out strong men. They were embarrassing men. They were holding men's feet to the fire, and they were strong. And they even had networks to support each other. They had whole social networks to where they could even identify men who weren't, well-to-do, who were scamming them. They had all kind of protections in place. Their strong fathers, their mothers, their children. They used what they needed to do in order to progress their lineage. And now, like, self-interest is real, because white women exercise self-interest, and now more so than ever, I feel like after reading this book, it just justifies our claim even stronger, because we see everybody do it.
Yeah, when you said something interesting, you said it really kind of solidifies our claim, because it's really a claim against. It's not just a claim against white men. Like, see, before white women, we were oppressed too. You were not property. You might have been mistreated and you didn't. Well, I didn't get to pay the same on the job. Or that's not the same as being property, being the commodity that was used to fuel the growth of America without getting anything from it, and then institutionalized and weaponized for generations. That did not happen to you for 400 years. I don't know how much it happened to you at all in terms of being property. I don't see that. But what I'm saying is that it kind of takes us out by ourselves, which is what we need to be. We're not them.
No, we're not. We're not them, and this book was a clear-cut case. I wish we had that social capital, and it would, given the position that we came out of, to navigate the way white women did. We'd be a lot further on.
Absolutely.
As an entire group.
Absolutely.
That's all I wanted to say. Everybody kind of hit on the passages and everything throughout 2 days worth of calls, but I just really wanted to highlight that we, like, self-interest, and we're not the same. Everybody has to navigate their political terrain the way they're best, and they've done it, so now we got to do it.
Yep, and we don't have to answer to anybody. Thank you, fam. I appreciate it. We don't have to answer.
Don't, because that's to be ashamed of.
Sorry, fam. Thank you, but we don't have to ask no questions. And, well, they might be upset. Don't nobody care if we upset when they decide what they gonna do politically. They don't say, well, I don't know, we might upset the Negroes. Don't nobody say that. What are you talking about? We gotta go talk to. I haven't seen the National Organization of Women show up in Parchment. Have you? What white feminist women organization have you seen show up? Forget that. Any of them? Who showed up at Parchment? Who showed up for us when we need stuff? We be talking about stuff. How many people have showed up for the reparations debate and said, you know what, I agree with ADOS? I want you to write down a number of groups you've seen do that. And those are the number of groups you're going to stand with in the future. Oh, you don't see anybody? Well, guess what? Stand alone. All right, fam, we're going to the next call. I'm going to 267. 267, I'm coming to you. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. It's Princess 6. How are you?
I'm doing good, Princess. How you doing?
Oh, Yvette. I got some ATL people out here listening in the show with me. So I'm doing real good because I'm with my ADOS ATL family.
Ah, okay. Well, that's what I'm talking about.
So once again, I love the book selection last month. I love this book this month. It is so necessary, Yvette. This book, I mean, I don't
even think I've ever read about like the narratives of slavery in such detail prior to this book.
Okay.
And I think that if we would have read this book through the lens of like a white male, I don't think it would have cut as deep as if reading the lens through white women and what they did. You know, so what I was struck by was everything that they had, we weren't allowed to have. And when they owned us, they owned everything. They owned what came from our wombs. They owned our breast milk. They owned everything we produced. There was nothing that belonged to us that could enrich us. And I can't even imagine really being in that space. The other thing is that struck me was, and someone had mentioned on the last show, the story about the woman and that went away and she came back. She was in the rocking chair and she was counting the money. And I remember reading that part. But I must have had some type of brain freeze because I don't remember reading the part where the little girl was saying, that was brother.
Yes.
That was brother.
Yes,
that
I remember.
Brother. I mean, can you imagine the heart and pain? You know what I mean? Just crazy. But what struck me the most with the book is how those white women tried to prolong slavery through multiple ways after the Civil War. And how they could claim that our children were orphans because they had broke our families up so thoroughly. You know, so it was a wonderful, I mean, I can't say a wonderful book, but it was a really insightful book. It was the type of book that we need from the political education. And, you know, I'm always struck by how the Confederacy kind of tells the story, but they leave out their bad actions, you know, in the story. And how we have white feminists that are trying to convince us to leave black men with the bag of what's going on, the way they left white men with the bag of slavery and white supremacy. So that's all I got to say. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, fam.
Appreciate you and keep doing what you do.
Appreciate it as always, Princess Six. Always appreciate you calling in, fam. Appreciate it. Yeah, that was. I think somebody brought that up last show, and when she said like brother's money or that was brother, like she was saying that, you know, the slave master, the woman, sold brother. And like she was like, yeah, I sold brother and I got a good price for him. Got a good price for brother. And like the mother who just came back because the woman slave master sent her off for a while, so she wouldn't be there when brother was sold, when her son was sold. And the girl, I mean the other child, I think it was the girl, was just like crying, like she sold brother away, like, and she just counting the bills, like, yes. And the thing is, think about the kicker to this though, fam. The woman, if I'm not mistaken, she didn't need no money. She was rich already. Like this kind of vulture. Like, you rich already, but I got a good price. Hey, it's what it is. I don't know what you're talking about. Got a good price. It's good money. Money's the money's the money's. They were already hoarding money and stuff like that. So this I didn't like. No, you need a white woman president because white women are different. It's not gonna be the same. You need Hillary because Hillary would never beat Bill. You say what? Okay. Next call. I am going to 903. 903. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Good evening, Yvette. This is Amanda Walker. I'm in Texas, and I have just cried reading this book. I mean, I've just been boohooing on both calls. This book brought back memories from my days as a slave in the school system. The white women still today teach their children that black people are to be punished. Now, before I retired, a young woman in her 20s, which was my coworker, she was about 15, 20 years younger than me.
Okay.
She asked the superintendent to punish me when I tried to intervene in a fight. There was two black girls getting ready to tear her room from one end to the other, and she didn't know what to do, so I told them to come out in the hallway. She went and told the principal that I jumped on her. So I could get in trouble. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. She told the principal. The principal had to take it to the superintendent. When we got to the superintendent's office, the superintendent said, well, she even brought her husband, girl, to the meeting, and he don't even work in the school district. Girl, he said, what do you want me to do to her, to Miss Walker? She said, I want you to punish her.
We both wrong.
Yes, she did. Hey, but that's what she said. Now, here's the second one. Then, 5 years ago, I had all I could take. I left about 7 years early. 5 years ago, an 11-year-old white girl that was in my class saw a black boy playing like I pushed him over a chair. You know, those black boys get up off their seat playing, right? She went to the principal and asked the principal, when was I going to be punished for pushing that boy over the chair? I went in the office and I said, I didn't push no boy over the chair. Well, so-and-so figured it. You hear me? 11 years old. And that's when it hit me. These people are still teaching their children something about us that they shouldn't be. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, like, why you gonna punish me? You can step outside and punch me yourself if you bad. What you mean? What you mean?
Yeah. I'm like, I could not believe this. They take something small and twist it and make it into a molehill, and they seal her in that frame. That principal, she has the same mentality. Otherwise, she wouldn't let that 11-year-old girl come to her with that man.
Yeah, and that's like, and it's like the little boy who she said was pushed was a black boy, right? Yeah, I mean, the idea that you, I'm not trying to be any kind of way, but the idea that you really care about him anyway. You just trying to find a way to get through to me. You don't really care about you don't really care. Oh, she got to be punished. She did something to child, you don't care about nothing's going on over here. What you just want to get me out of here, get me in trouble.
Well,
but they real good. We've seen that recently. We've seen that recently, fam, where they be calling the police all the time. They over here walking around, having fun, having barbecues. Something got to be done about this.
Yeah. Well, there's and the last thing I wanted to say is, I know you know this. I don't know how many of the other family on the line tonight know this, but the white woman was the one that, they had a WKKK, Women's Ku Klux Klan. They took their children to the WKKK. They're the ones that taught their children. They're also the ones that made the Ku Klux Klan outfit for the men.
Absolutely, fam. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for calling in, fam. I want to thank you for calling in. I'm sure to appreciate it. Thank you so much. Ooh, this is a lot. You understand the oppression wasn't just a white male oppression. It was a family. It was a familial. People were getting their money. Exploitation is real. Anyway, I'm going to the next caller. Going to 919. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, my name is Keisha. I'm from North Carolina.
What's going on?
That thing, I'm really excited and I'm nervous.
Take your time. Take your time.
He just really helped me and changed my life.
Put your mouth to the phone. I can't hear you real good. You muffled a little bit. Okay.
This is something that's already been talked about. Tell me to shut up and keep it moving. So one of the very good points that I found was on page 33.
You still a little bit muffled for me. Is she muffled for y'all, fam? I can't hear you real good. You're a little bit muffled for me. Oh, she's
that would reserve to her for her own benefit, her property, for every description of money and choices in action, personal property, or every description. And I thought that was just so crazy that they were working in that kind of way.
You sound muffled, fam. Hey, fam, can you hear me? I think she hit the mute button by mistake. Can you hear me, fam?
I can hear you.
Okay, you were muffled. You sound much better now. So whatever you're doing right now, stay right there.
Okay.
And then tell me what you just told me, because I didn't hear it.
Okay, I'll keep you on speakerphone.
Okay,
then.
thank you.
No, I was talking about how they were doing marriages, but on page 77, one of the things that really broke my heart was the murder trial of Eliza Rowland.
Okay.
And it was the one where they stated that South Carolina South Carolina declared it was lawful for any white person to beat, maim, or assault a black person, and if such Negro or slave cannot otherwise be taken, to kill him, who shall refuse to show his ticket, or by running away or resistance shall endeavor to avoid being apprehended or taken. And so this was the murder trial of Eliza. And what was crazy was that no white witnesses came forward to challenge her claim of the death. And so because no white person would stand up and testify against her, there was nothing to be done.
Yeah.
That one, it was a lot. I don't even have words for that.
Because I might murder. Because the thing is, they might murder a slave. So I don't want to come up. There's a code here, right? So what if I go and talk? Right. Why would I talk about her? Like, she's a friend in the community. I'm gonna need social capital from her, and I might murder a slave one day. I don't want her to come to me, right? And these slaves aren't worth anything anyway. That's
right. Another point I wanted to make real quick was page 169. And it was just the caucasity, the audacity, whatever you want to call it, because these women, they were just so bold. And the point was some women finding that their letters and requests did not result in a return of their slaves for compensation for those that they had lost. They took matters into their own hands, traveling to Union encampments to find and repossess their slaves. I was just blown away by that. Like, who does that? You walked up to the Union camp and was like, "Give me my property."
Yeah, I know he is somewhere. She is somebody. Yeah. That goes. I mean, like I bring her out. I'm gonna write Lincoln if you don't break my slave up out of here. And then years later want to be like, we get affirmative action too because we are oppressed. Child, who you thought you was?
And then I'll get off the line. And that the very last thing, I've been watching you since you were with Army and y'all was snapping y'all fingers at the intern Matthew. I've been following you for quite a while. So the last point I wanted to make was on page 205, and you said this a really long time ago, Yvette, and it always stuck with me in my mind. And you talked about how white women were the gardening hands of racism, and it's so true. And on page 205, the last portion is actually the epilogue, and it states, if we acknowledge that white women stood to personally and directly benefit from the commodification and enslavement of African Americans, we can better understand their participation in post-war white supremacist movements and atrocities such as lynching, as well as their membership in organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. Southern white women's roles in upholding and sustaining slavery form part of the much larger history of white supremacy and oppression. And through it all, they were not passive bystanders. They were co-conspirators.
Oh, what something to read! Co-conspirators! Oh, Becky!
I love you, Yvette. I appreciate everything you've done. Sorry, my phone was raggedy, y'all. I'm going to get off the line.
Now, you were good once you got on speaker.
I appreciate it. Good night.
And it ain't no problem, fam. We all understand. We all done had raggedy phones. It was good once you got on speaker. Crack phones, jam phones, the phone. You got to hold it up. We've been there. We understand. Fam, I want to go to the next call. I'm going to 510. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette. It's Benita Brown out of Oakland,
Hey,
ADOS, Bay Area.
How you doing?
The chair throwing community.
Yes, I love my chair throwing community.
Yeah, so thank you for the book club. Excited about this book, so I'm going to just jump right in.
Okay.
I have about 3 pages of notes. I'm not going to get them all.
Okay.
But page 31, they talked about married women were entitled to the money that the slaves earned when they hired them out. And then they went on to say how the page 45, when 19th century Southern jurists protected women's interests, they were acting as patriarchs. These legal connections undergirded their economic relationships to the institution of slavery. And they mention on page 54 about judicial patriarch, which could be the reason why a judge might rule in favor of a married woman. What was interesting here to me was, and it says here, the majority of women who filed lawsuits did not leave their husbands. They were requesting separation from bed and board, what we considered a legal separation today, or divorce.
In one county, of the 208 cases filed, only 28 requested separation.
Mm.
So I got to reading this, and I had to laugh like they played us. Because I've gone to divorce court, and it's like the judge did everything he could to just break us down and, break up the little wealth that we had collectively, and just he didn't look at it as if I was a white woman and he was trying to help me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Hold my position. But, yeah. So that's what stood out on that part. I had to laugh to keep from crying on that one. The second paragraph that I want to go to is on page, 87. It says, power was part of every transaction, and the roles individual played within those collaborations shaped the power they had over the transaction. Some
I like that. I underline that too.
Others performed legwork, balancing command and power. Women incorporated currency and human commodities into their social networks. That was just too much right there. Page 150, paragraph. Their decisions to buy and sell enslaved people helped to sustain the institution of slavery and the domestic slave trade, severed relationships between enslaved family members, and broke emotional bonds that would never be mended. The slave-owning women who engaged in slave market activities were far more than begrudgingly complicit bystanders on the margins of the peculiar institution. They had an immense economic stake in the continued enslavement of African Americans, and they struggled to find ways to preserve the system when the Civil War threatened to destroy the institution of slavery and their wealth along with it.
There you go. That's it. In a nutshell, ain't it?
That's it. But hold on, there's more.
Oh no.
Last comment. Page 200. It says former slave-owning women offered three primary reasons why they had supported the institution of slavery. One was it was good, a positive for African Americans who slavery, they say, civilized us. The second reason was it was God's own plan for helping inferior people, and white women were following his divine instructions in furthering it. That's a lie. The third reason was they were born with it, they grew up with it, lived with it, and it was their daily life. How could they help supporting it? Not because of the white men, but they had come to this conclusion all on their own.
Yeah, part of my culture.
And it goes on to say, as they write about it, they distance themselves from the fourth reason, their direct economic investment into slavery and their pecuniary interest in perpetrating it. And everybody already hit on page 204. And then 205. 204 says these women were not exceptional, but similar to women in other parts of the world who benefited from slavery. Whether English women who invested in the Royal African Company at the height of the Atlantic slave trade, or the female slave trader like Madame Ifuro of Nigeria, who sold captives along the coast of Africa.
Wait a minute.
That was on page 204.
Watch out now. I brought that up, but I didn't read the passage last week. Yes.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Watch. See, the thing is, we're aggregating this, fam. I want you to say, we're aggregating the people who are responsible. This is a wonderful moment to be alive. There's no reason to be depressed. We're aggregating the people who are responsible for our oppression, right? So before we just like the white men, and no white men, white women. Then we got some people over here that in Nigeria, in the west coast of Africa, who we hold a lot of people responsible, and we're figuring out who we are. Like, to me, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Amen. Amen, sister. Amen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Lastly, I want to say the book that I would recommend that we read next is we need something lighter than this book. This was Why We Can't Wait. Why We Can't Wait, Martin Luther King. It's a short read, and it's
you want another King book?
Another King book. Why We Can't Wait. And that's all I got. Thank you for the book club, and thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going now to 785. 785. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Beth. It's me, Joan from Kansas.
Hey, Joan. What's going on? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain at all.
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. I've been locked myself in my house for the past 2 days
Uh-huh.
because white women are not safe around me right now.
Don't you get yourself in trouble.
I told you I locked myself in my house. I've been here for 2 days.
Absolutely, I understand.
Reading that book, I'm telling you the truth, child.
It was too much. Too much.
Page 200 and 201. I'm not going to read. They're in the epilogue. I'm not going to read them. But
Okay.
two things came to mind. One of the things, you know how they like to tell us that we don't know anything about family and we don't, care about families and things like that?
Absolutely.
Well, one thing that my family did was my great-great-great-grandmother started out naming her children, and she would name the girl. If she had a girl, she would name the girl one name. If she had another daughter, she would name that daughter that same name coupled with another one. Let me give you an example, because I ain't making much sense. My mother's name was Barbara Joanne.
Okay.
That's what her mother named her, and her mother, my grandmother, was a daughter of a slave.
Okay.
So my name is Joanne Marie.
Okay.
So they kept that. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're doing. I see what she was doing.
Because after the, pardon me?
I see what she was doing.
And that's what they did to keep, kind of as much control as they could over their kids. So after slavery, they went and looked for those kids and those husbands and wives and their family. They did that. And page 201, the last call, I think it was, brought it up about they thought God had ordained them to make slaves out of us.
Yep.
Well, that's one of the things that we're dealing with as ALS people right now. Because, unfortunately, a lot of white people still believe that. They think they did, and I've heard them say it, that they did us a favor by enslaving us, and that we ought to be grateful about it and just get somewhere and hush and be glad for the crumbs that we get. And unfortunately, there are too many of us, ADOS people, American descendants of slaves, that believe that nonsense too. They put that into our. This is one of the things that I ran into back when I was dealing with civil rights and things of that nature. There are a lot of black people, American descendants of slaves, that truly believe that they gave us something good by bringing us over here and giving us their God and throwing Jesus at it. They put that in our heads during slavery.
A submissive God, too.
Right. And a lot of us still believe it. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Yeah. Slavery. I mean, and yeah, you're right. And slavery and 400 years of oppression or crude disadvantage. You're supposed to be like, well, I showed us. Thank you, master. I showed us. And not to mention the ways in which so many countries in the continent of Africa have been depleted of resources. Like, so you have to go back and think and then you have to go back and think what if there was some solidarity between Africans, right? In the sense of, like, we don't want to sell other tribes people to Europeans. Like, there's so much that could have been done differently, but it wasn't. And I don't understand the idea that, okay, you think this is somehow beneficial, like, to us. Especially if you live this life, we should know better. I don't know what they thinking about. I think they just thinking about anything that helps them sleep at night. But I think we should know better in terms of, like, well, we at least we ain't blah, 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 blah. Do you understand what we've lived with? Because it's just like what King said. We don't just live in, and I said it before, and I'll say it again, we don't just live in poverty, because people love to say, well, if you make $30,000 a year, you're living better than the poorest people around the globe. We live in poverty in a land of affluence. that's like basically taunting somebody, like having somebody starve and just sitting around them eating the
Mhm.
best of food. That's the worst situation.
Mhm. That's right.
So
And they had no regard for that whatsoever.
none.
Doesn't even cost a little weak moment. Well, that's all I had really, except for one thing. I've got a suggestion for the next book.
Okay.
But the last caller was talking about we need something light after this one, and I agree. Because this one's kind of heavy, the one I want us to read. It's called The Delectable Negro. And it's about how they used to buy us and sell us and cut us up like we do a side of beef and sell us that way and eat us.
Is that lighter? That's not a lighter read.
It's rough. I've been reading on it for about 6 months.
Oh.
It's not a very big book, but it's rough to get through. I ain't gonna lie.
Oh, I guess so. Oh gosh, thank you so much, fam. I always appreciate when you call in. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And take you a whole another couple of days before you go outside. We don't want you mollywopping nobody. Take you another couple of days and get your.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it easy, and thank you for the book club. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
I got about 50 books that I'm just bought to read, and this was one of them. So I was ready to go.
Oh, great. So we already got your list, so that was great. Wonderful. Thank you, family, so much. Thank you. I appreciate you as always calling in. Yeah. Ooh, delectable eating. Oh, that was cannibals. Anyway, let me go to the next call. Jeez, we still always got a full deck. Anyway. Ooh, wait. 504. I'm coming to you. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. This is Yolanda. I'm calling from Harvey, Louisiana. I'm going to be quick here. Page 125.
Okay.
And the author devoted a couple of pages to Elizabeth Childress. And I just wanted to comment on, I guess it's the second portion of 125, the second paragraph. And if anyone is not familiar with Elizabeth Childress, she was a young woman who lied about her age and brought her slaves Sally in. And then when she found out that she had been cheated, they paid her less than what Sally was really worth. And she had the business acumen enough to, go and find someone who would file a lawsuit for her. And actually, she ended up winning the case.
Yep.
And but I wanted to point out that someone a couple of calls before said that we have been played. And these feminists, these second wave and third wave feminists, they have played, especially black women that are gullible enough to follow them in that movement. Elizabeth Childress proves that they have used us in a way. They played white men to. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit upset because, like a couple of calls, I've been crying over this book as well, and I have scores of the slave narratives and all those books, but it still hits you hard. They're playing both sides of the coin. They're playing both victim here, as well as they're the perpetrators as well, as this book and many others point out. And what they have done is even up, this was 200 years ago. They have all the way up to today. They have some of our women following them in this mess, and I'm struck by this because we're still falling for. I remember back in the 80s when Essence was, still relevant to our situation, the magazine, and there was a young writer commenting on how, she couldn't see. She saw the hypocrisy in the sisterhood that the second wave feminists were. Touting at that point. She saw the hypocrisy in it, and she mentioned, said, you can't say that we should, band together against male oppression when, you know, my mother is working in your homes and you're paying her $25 a week as a housekeeper. The mother was working, the black mother was working in the home. And that brought, this passage brought that to mind. And, you know, how the pantsuit brigade got all upset when Hillary was running against Obama. And I say all of that to just say this. If any of us think that feminist movement is for us, we need to really take a second look at, you know, how we assess things, because it is not for us. It is not for us. And that's not to say that, you know, we should not all be getting the same pay and all of that. I agree and all that, but they're not victims, in other words. And then I want to say this to you, and we'll say this about you, Tone, and the breakingbrown family, and all of the people that are really reading this book. This is a hard book to read, and put it down. It took me a while to read it because I had to go to the notes and look up the narratives and read the narratives, and then that put me in another state of bad state of mind. But what we're doing, I felt, and I listened to the program the other day, but I wouldn't call in because I couldn't bring myself to do it. And then I thought about, if my people can live it, I should have the courage enough to bear witness. And what we're doing here is bearing witness with this group, because as we're sitting here talking tonight, they're rewriting textbooks in Texas, and the other people are co-opting our stories and things, and they're really pushing our issues and our stories to the background. So I want to thank you for giving us a means to bear witness to this.
Well, thank
and
you,
have a good night. And
that was powerful.
I love you guys.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you, Pam. I appreciate you so much. That was powerful. We should all have the courage to bear witness. And you just, the caller, thank you so much, just made me think of something. I think that's part of the reason that I hate, I don't want to say hate, but I hate this idea that we should be opposed to slavery movies, because I think it's a weakness. I think it's a cowardice. I think it is an inability, right, to bear witness to what our ancestors did and paved the way that allows us to be here and have this conversation today. So I think what the call did just hit on something that one of the reasons why I just despise this idea that, we shouldn't have any more slave movies. No, we have to bear witness, and we don't have to bear witness just one time. There were so many aspects, so many stories to be told. We have to bear witness to that. And not only us, America needs to bear witness to that. If you want to talk about paving the way for reparations, bearing witness is part of what makes that possible. So anyway, I'm going to the next call, fam. I am going now. I'm going to 314. 314, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? You there, 314? 314. All righty, tighty. 314 seems not to be there. Let's go to 219. 219, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. It's Mitzi. How are you?
Pretty good.
Hey, Yvette. I called you maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We had called. I was in Chicago at the time, and we were talking about gentrification.
Okay.
So, and I've been following you, and I've been really trying to get on top of everything that's going on. I had told the story really briefly about how a neighborhood that we were living in was being gentrified, and there was a coffee shop that, all the doctors that were dining out there in the cafe, and while my brother was being murdered at the next corner, and how things were changing in the city of Chicago. Well, since then I've relocated and everything. I'm in the state of Indiana, and I just wanted to put that out there just to refamiliarize you with me. But when the callers call in and they talk about how their heart breaks about this book, what breaks my heart is that when I read this book, I think about my own family. And I think about the fact that my grandmother, who I never knew, gave birth to 18 children. My mother being the second youngest. My grandmother would pass on before my mother really got to know her. She died, of course, of ovarian cancer.
Okay.
But when I read this book and I think about how we were used to breed, we start to understand that having all these kids was really not a norm of what they wanted to do. It was just what they understand was right. Now, all of my aunts and uncles, my mother included, in the last couple years, they've all passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really know who we are. We've never done ancestry or anything like that. I would ask my mom about her mom and where she came from. They never knew. I have one uncle. I called him just recently to ask him, and he's like, I really don't know where our story began. Now, this is just their mothers who they're talking about. So when we go to page 31 and we start talking about Mary Jane Jones, I believe it is,
Mm-hmm.
and her grandmother bearing 26 children,
Oof, yeah.
just to turn out to be enslaved. Because I believe this was her grandmother, because it says that as a formerly enslaved woman named Mary Jane Jones observed, the gift of enslaved females served as a kind of nest egg that parents gave to their children. So, and they have in here that her grandmother was passed on from the father to the son. And then they went and got her an enslaved husband. So they forced a relationship on her. And from that, she gave birth to 26 children. And the wife, F.H. Brown's is the mistress, 75 slaves in her own right. So when you think about, they were breeding us like we were animals. And then you think, I'm three generations from a grandmother who we know nothing about, where she came from. And her own kids pretty much knew nothing about her because she passed away before they even established a relationship with her. And then I remember you talking about how careers are passed down.
Absolutely.
Now I work for the railroad, and you cannot believe these people who bring their children in. Bring them in, like, I'm working with kids like 26 years old who, white kids, who the father, he told me he has 10 kids. He brought his son on. His son is 26 years old. He already has 5 kids. And they're bringing them along, and they're bringing them to start a career when I'm the only person in my entire family who is fractionally earning a living. And it's only fractional because nobody else in my family is earning a living wage. So I just wanted to add that and tell you that the book was a heavy read, and Absolutely. We can't get something lighter. But the book breaks my heart. It breaks my heart for the people who were involved, but it breaks my heart because I'm one of those people who do not know where I came from. I don't know who my grandmother was. I don't know who my grandfather was. And with the generation before me all passing away, those questions will probably never be answered. And that's all I want to say. And thank you for everything.
Thank you. No, thank you,
and Tone, I love you guys.
We love you back. And I want to speak. I'll speak off air of something you just said, Carla, which is so profound. When you say, like, I don't even know who those people, who my family is. One of the things you're really speaking to is our brokenness, right? See, nobody talks about, that's why I have a problem with all these Negroes who say, we just got to get over these dusties and rusty and whatever. And we're all we're all coming from the same place. Now, just because you're a con artist and you conned your way into a space where you don't belong, that has nothing to do with the fact, that has nothing to do with the lineage and history of who we are in this country and what has happened to us. And you don't kind of, there's this whole cheap thing going on in our community. It's really cheap, where you paint over suffering and you paint over real history and you paint over real lineage and you paint over real oppression with this cheap garbage of this kind of, I don't know, this cheap aesthetic. So you paint it with a guy who's really a con, who looks like he might have come from Morehouse one day and looks like he's a pimp the next day and look like he's, just the what do you call that? What was that movie with what was it, Leonardo DiCaprio, where he was a con artist and he was a bunch of different people. What was that name of the what was the child's name? Catch Me If You Can or something like that. That's kind of what we are, and we have these people who just kind of paint over our oppression, right? By doing little slick stuff. Well, you just got to be less dusty and work together. Throw the whole thing away. It doesn't work. It doesn't work when we deal with it. This heaviness, like this heaviness you feel from reading the book, this heaviness you feel from the people, all of these callers, all of us have experienced this to some level, to some extent, whether it's the kids, whether it's I see this at work, whether it's in all of our families. That's the thread of all these calls. You don't get over that. You don't get over that or get through that or get around that without focusing on that and dealing with the cost of that and the accrued disadvantage of that. You don't get around that by making other people feel bad, by condemning other black people for not having what you have, even though what you have came from a con, right? So that's my thing. Like, stop letting people, we all got to stop letting people make us shaming us, right? We got to get over this whole thing where we let somebody else kind of shame us into something. Well, that person called me dusty and musty. I must be dusty and musty. No, you're talking to a con artist. That person is worthless. They don't matter. Sometimes when somebody is saying something, just ask yourself, before you ask yourself whether the person is right or wrong, even before you get that way, just ask the person, does this person matter? I think one of the things that we have to do in our lives in terms of ADOS, because sometimes I see some of you out and you get upset, and I understand why we get upset, but you have to decide the math in your mind before you even fly hot. Right? I'm an Aries. We fly hot. Before you fly hot, ask yourself, does this person matter? In the scheme of things, this person right here, do they matter? And I guarantee you'll say no. And once you understand that, you can move on. Deal with people who matter in terms of what they do and what they represent and who we are. We all matter. We're all talking. We're all reading the book. We're all doing the work together. You have to deal with that. You can't deal with this other stuff. This other stuff is clown show stuff. We don't deal with clown show mess around here. Okay, I'm going to the next call. I am going now to 773. 773, I'm coming to you. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette.
Hey.
This is Keisha, and I'm calling from Chicago, Illinois.
What's going on, Chicago?
Well, I really, this book, wow. Whew, I had to really just take a beat, but because it's just, I had to go lay down after, reading it for a while. But what I gathered from it, and I think that, what the Breaking Brown family should do is look at the show Underground to just as a companion piece, because everything that this book details, that show details this. They talk about Patty Cannon and so much of the agency of white women on the backs of in spite of their husbands, because if I'm not mistaken, in the show, it was the wife, she owned the slaves, and her husband, he changed his name to her name so he could run for office.
Oh, okay. So she had the sway.
I mean, when I say, I'm sorry?
I said she had the sway.
She would use her power, because she would always say, well, my father, this and that and the other. So she would always tell him, but she had so much power that he changed his name to her name. so he could gain more political power.
Mm.
And I thought that was it. They got, I don't know who, the writers, they got everything right in terms of, white women owning slaves and, that the slaves were her property and that was her land.
Okay.
And, while she sat and prayed to demure, white delicate flower, but she would wield her power as she saw fit. And a lot of times it was at the expense of the female slave.
Mm.
And another thing I want to bring it, current. I think that as a Breaking Brown family, should really take a look at how white women, how they gain their agency on the backs of black people.
Mm.
In terms of the feminist movement, they gain their agency, and they're doing it. They keep redoing it over and over again. Those same tropes and themes, they replay themselves over and over again. And they'll try to say, they'll adopt certain things in our history and just kind of input it in their, and make it their slogan. Oh, we shall overcome. Mm. We shall do this. We shall do that. And it's just very interesting to see how it's replaying itself.
So what you're really kind of saying is that they kind of commodify us in a certain way. I don't know if that's the right word. But over and over again.
They do. It is a commodification. Mm. It is. It's a continuation of commodification. Okay. But I think a lot of us don't see it that way. Oh, it's just, they're all together with us when in fact they're just reassessing their power over us or their agency on the backs of us. So I just, people really need to open up their eyes. White women, they, like I said, they wield their power as they see fit. And then they go back on their little perch and they play like they're so innocent. But, that's just what they do, and that's what they've done.
Mm. Mm.
That's what they've done. And I think that you see a replay of it, in terms of the Women's March and different things. I was like, but you voted for Trump. That's not our fight. I got a lot of flack for that. I was like, that's not our fight. I was like, that's their mess. That's their stuff. And I said, you know what? After they keep on, they march and yell in the street, I said, they're going right back to white suburbia.
Yeah, and they're gonna tell us what to do. You gonna tell me what to do? No, go talk to the white women that you know and the white men who you're married to and who's your uncle, who's your daddy, who's your son, and you go tell all of them that, hey, we got to work on ourselves because we put Trump in here. Don't come here. And, Black America voted overwhelmingly Democrat, always does. Don't come here talking about, well, if the black, you all gonna cost us the White House. No, you the one put Trump in there. You go clean up your spilled milk by yourself, with your whole family, because your family is the problem, not mine.
Exactly. So, it's that whole continuation. And another thing, it's pervasive how they, capitalize off of us. And it's sick. And I don't think that people really know, until they, take a look at it. It is sick how you're being used, like you said, commodified, and it's pervasive. It's like violence.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. How many ways can they eat us? How many ways, It's sick, and it's just a bad movie playing over and over again.
And over again.
But once again,
but you know what happens, fam? Yeah. Before you go, it's kind of like Groundhog Day. You just said a bad movie played over and over again, right? When you see a lot of these movies where something is done over and over again, that means a lot of times when you watch movies are very interesting. A lot of times when you watch movies like that where there's something repetitive going on, it doesn't change until the person changes something different that they're doing, right? So, this is happening to me, and they start trying to change stuff, and they figure out, I need to make this change. I think what has to happen is that ADOS needs to wake up. Like, we need to change. And instead of letting people take advantage of us and use us and be the doorway to whatever they're doing and make us be their mules and all, we have to totally change the way we view ourselves, totally change our politics and the way we activate ourselves in terms of politics, in terms of being for ourselves, in terms of ADOS first. That's what has to change first. We have to stop doing politics, and before you even talk about politics, viewing ourselves the way we view ourselves. We just got to stop complaining. We have to do things differently. When we do things differently, I think things start to shift. I think we've already started to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I just think you can't let them gaslight you because they're only gaslighting you for their purpose.
True.
That's just what it is. That's what it's always been. And with this book, you can see that's what it's always been. It's for their benefit. You know, it's almost like we're their constant doormat. And I just wish that more of us would wake up, because I mean, history it replays itself. It's just playing itself in a different form. And and this book really shows you. But also, I think that people should take a look at that show, Underground, because it's really a mirror image of this book. It's amazing.
Okay.
I don't know who.
Absolutely.
They got everything right in terms of research. When I say everything, they went to South Carolina. They had everything right in terms of. I just would like for people to take a look at it as a companion piece to this book.
Okay, thank you, fam. I so much appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I heard somebody else. I don't get to watch a lot of TV, but somebody else told me that Watchmen. She talked about Underground. Somebody told me that like Watchmen was good. I understand we're not getting another season of it, but somebody told me like the I remember hearing a whole bunch of stuff about the Tulsa and the intro there. So Oklahoma and so. So a lot of people must be paying attention to Twitter and doing a lot of writing and trying to get the history right, and that's good, because you should get history right. We're American. You absolutely should. Going to the next call. I am going to going to 503. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, hello, Yvette.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, this is Quentin calling from Portland.
What's
How
going
are
on,
you
Quentin?
doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Hey. Oh, good. I just want to thank you for selecting this book. It was very eye-opening and tuned me into a lot of things that I had no idea about. So it really was life-changing, honestly. It gave me a lot of context for some of the things that my interactions with white women in the workplace and in other settings. It really gave me context and sort of a way to put things into perspective and have some type of grounding for, when I experience certain indignities and different things like that. It helped me use this book as a reference point. So I'm really thankful that I was able to read it and get this information.
Okay.
And like you said, kind of aggregate what's been done. So one of the passages that really stood out to me was on page 89, and it says, it's in the first full paragraph, at the bottom of the first full paragraph, it says, Isaac Franklin, a slave trader who was one of the richest Americans in the country before his death in 1839, quit the trade after he married Adelicia Hayes, but only after he had grown wealthy from buying and selling enslaved people. Other traders could not afford to quit the business, however, and still more did not see any reason to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when I'm reading books and stuff, I'll Google some of the historical figures that are named. So I decided to kind of research a little bit about Isaac Franklin, and it turns out that he owned Angola Plantation, which is now a state penitentiary in Louisiana. And I've seen different things about Angola, how it's like kind of like, in a sense, like a death camp. A lot of those prisons south where those black men are warehoused in large numbers, they're death camps. And I thought it was very significant because there was a lot of talk about parchment at the time. You guys and several of the ADOS family members were talking about parchment. So it lets you know that accrued disadvantage, that torture, that pain, the wealth, all of that reaches. I don't see how people can deny that it's still in the system. It's still around today. And these are basically like death camps. 13 people in Parchment have died in the last month, I think it is. So, I mean, it just really blew my mind. And it kind of makes me wonder, who else was a slave owner or a slave trader back then in those southern states, the Deep South, and still has some of those prisons around and those concentration camps. So it was very fascinating to run into that tidbit of history.
Okay.
And I just thought there's something else. It's like, I think intersectionality, it's kind of the scam of intersectionality. This book pointed out that scam is like, it assumes all people have a story of suffering or it allows all people to be both oppressed and oppressors. So, like, you know, the wealthy white housewife, she has a story of suffering because she's a woman. Or, you know, even when you talk about the lynchings and different things that occurred during Reconstruction and after Reconstruction, the different violence that took place, there were a lot of poor white people who perpetuated that. But people, because of intersectionality, people will say, "Oh, well, they're poor, so
take one part of them, take one part of their life." Yeah,
so they'll say that their oppression is on par with you guys, or a white woman. She automatically. I mean, these white women who were in this book, I didn't hear any kind of stories of suffering. They were like, if you look at a game of chess, they were like the most powerful piece on the board.
Oh, they were playing too. They were masterful.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then I went to an event earlier this week. Like I said, the book has given me context for my life, and I have other family members that I listen to with you. And I went to an event that was about the African American vote and how important it is for us to vote. And you know, that's a whole nother story, how that was silly. But, you know, the mayor, he conveniently, when he was talking about African Americans voting and how important it is, he conveniently slipped women in there. You know, how women were denied suffrage. And they're very slick about it. When they add that, they'll start out saying, "Oh, well, black people," and then after a couple of seconds, they'll slide how white women were denied the right to vote too. So it's been very eye-opening, and I just knew that it was garbage as soon as he started talking about that. I was like, "Oh, that's not."
Yeah, here we
go.
Know,
now that I've read this book, I can point to how, in so many ways, they've always been empowered. So,
yeah, and don't talk about like the right to vote. Like, you had wealth and different stuff. Like when politics came, and then you got what you like. Come on, man. Like it's just too much. But you're right, Carla. You're right. People always try to, and I want to thank you for calling in. People always try to put everybody else on par with us. Like, no, like we were her property too. Just because she had to fight her man in them, and you know, and her own familial and different wealth groups where white people were fighting. That's not the same thing as like. No, we were her and his property. I don't know what y'all talking about. So I'm going to my next call. I'm going to 614. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
What up, Yvette?
How you doing?
Alpha Love, y'all. So pleased to talk to you. Oh my goodness, this book had me on fire so bad I had to switch jobs because I worked amongst a whole crap load of white women.
Switch jobs.
What makes me mad about this book and me looking at the situation from a real close proximity was the fact that they always play the victim. They always play the victim. They want to take the light off of you immediately, okay? And I love the book because it really shows you that. Just like, okay, me and my friend, we do a lot of, you know, politician meetings and stuff like that. I'm going to one on Wednesday. I'm noticing how the mayor is about to use his wife here in Ohio to talk about the housing market. See, they always doing this. Okay, that book just made me so angry. I had to leave that job because I thought I was going, oh my God. Woo! Girl,
keep
listen,
your hands to yourself.
That book does so many aspects. So many aspects of the psychology of how they do things. They usher in the women to keep the game going. They always do.
Well, you know, but let me pause you right there. Let me pause you right there because they're ushering the women to keep the game going. And let me talk about how that's, and I just want to put this in. I said this, I think, before, but I just want to put this in again. Like how you can get a minority business loan or whatever, grant, and minority means women too. So like, I've heard this before that like you're a man and you have a business, you just make sure that your wife is on the business, and now you qualify as a white man for a minority business loan. Like, come on, like what is this?
They killing that game here in Ohio. Like, okay, for instance, I just went to a so-called minority meeting. Now, they got a black chick ushering this in. You know, they using her as it's like a token. You know what I'm saying? Like she's a trophy. You know what I'm saying? But they pay her to play this game with them. You see what I'm saying? And that's where our problem lies. You got too many people who's so thirsty for money and all this stuff that they willing to cover all the other mess that's going on.
Yeah.
Like black contractors not getting a contract to build the roads. That mess. Oh, you don't see nobody from Ohio building these roads. Okay, you don't see nobody rehabbing these houses. They sold us out to states, Philadelphia, New York, different states that took care of their citizens, and they trying to push Ohioans out. I have a non-for-profit where I help the homeless, and I see so many ADOS homeless. They working homeless, okay? And I'm just sitting here in these meetings, and I explain, you're not helping them. You're helping you.
Oh.
You know?
That's what a lot of these. That's what a lot of these little NGOs. A lot of these little NGOs ain't us. They be helping themselves.
Yeah, and that's what's the sick part, and they don't, and I don't see it be the white women get with the black women with these movements. I watched this. My friend and me split up because I told her I'm not going to sit here and bow down to this bull crap because I know. She went along with it, and then they ended up screwing her. Then she came back and started talking to me.
Ain't that what they do when you get screwed? Now you want to have. I told you though. I told you. What? She said.
Not only that, this is another thing about that book. This is another thing that irritated me about the book. They treated them like animals. Okay. What irritates me about the book, like today, you see them. They love the crap out of dogs and everything else. But you don't hear them talk about all these deaths in freaking prisons and all this stuff that they're doing, killing little young black boys and stuff. They'll fight for a dog more so than you.
Well, take it a step back. Take it a step back. Take it a step back, caller. Take it a step back, caller. I haven't seen one women's rights organization come out in favor of reparations. Have anybody? If I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong. I don't have any problem with being wrong.
Me neither. Me neither. And they not. They just said, well, we suffered oppression and stuff. You see, this is my thing. That was your choice. We didn't choose that. That was their choice. Why are you going to bring up your choice as something that we chose? We didn't choose this.
Well, yeah, and then but the thing is, like, you had leverage and power in your relationships. Like, you weren't brought here to be owned and cut off. You had leverage, and even and it's not just. Don't just say people want to. Let me just make one point. One of the points in this book is that most of the slave owners own less than 10 slaves. So we're not just talking about really wealthy plantation women. We're talking about some people who had like 1 or 2 slaves. We're not just talking about wealthy white women here. That's not just what we're talking about. We're not talking about like. What was the other book? Gosh, about the clay eating white people. I got white trash, something like that. We're talking about that was a whole different group. We're not talking.
Those are the gatekeepers, though. Yeah. Yvette, those are the gatekeepers. That's who they use as the gatekeepers. Trust me. They send them in as the gatekeepers. I've been watching this whole thing, and I've been sitting back like, wow, this is sick.
Yeah. But one that I'm gonna let you.
And that's who they use.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you get the last word, Carl. I'm gonna bring some other people in, but yeah, you're right. Okay.
I pretty much that was just my point. That book had me flabbergasted.
All right, Carl. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Appreciate you for calling in. Thank you. Going now to 301. 301. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? 301. You there?
Yeah, Yvette, how you doing? This is Marshall.
Hey, Marshall, what's going on?
How you doing?
Pretty good.
How you doing, sis? I had to call back again because, as always, when I call in, I want to give you your roses. So today, the DMV, ADOS DMV chapter had a great chapter meeting, new membership meetup, and while we were talking, this book came up, and how people were so shocked about it. As a matter of fact, people were, when I was introducing myself and talking to people were kind of looking up and saying, hold up, I know that voice. I think I heard you in the book club the other night, or I heard. So they was like, yeah, bruh, that book was a mess. So while we're like talking and so forth, it came up. So I want to congratulate you because being somebody who's been with you in the beginning for the book clubs at the beginning, I remember it was either when affirmative action was white or when the Irish became white. That book club night, you were kind of disappointed in how many people, how few people you expect to call in.
I think it was when the Irish became white.
These book clubs are just too important. And now, hey, you got your wit, sister. You on you on day 2 of this book club.
You right.
And,
you right, Marshall.
Congratulations.
I was pissed. Oh, we didn't have it like I think it was when the Irish became white though. And it was just like the callers like now we got like 2 days, like the queue's full right now. Like, but that day, I don't know, we got to like, and I was just like, well, we out of callers. Oh, raggedy. Like this man. But so thank you, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you, Marshall. I thank you. And I thank you for the roses.
Too quick. I have a question for you. Due to the fact that we had so many calls last night, the other night we were rushing through. I wasn't able to get to this point, but I have a question for you and a quote that just kind of blew my mind and put together some very ugly dots, but they were necessary. My question is this. As thorough as this book was, and getting to the title, They Were Her Property, in history we know that 2 of the most infamous slave owners were 2 of our first presidents, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. And if you know the history of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, the slaves that they owned came in through the wives, both named Martha, Martha Washington and Martha Jefferson. Were you surprised when I was reading this book? I was thinking that I was going to read something shocking or something about them, and except for maybe a page, I think it's either 135 or 136 in whatever, they spoke about Jefferson wanting to sell like a boy or like a young slave or whatever, but they didn't get into either of the Marthas. Were you surprised that neither of the president's wives were mentioned in this book?
Not really. I think a lot have been said about them because they were also in I don't know if y'all remember, but I think at least one of them was in American Slavery, American Freedom. So I think a lot have been said about them because that's when I first got my inkling of, wait a minute, they really are inheriting wealth through the wife. And like the men are looking for a good wife because that's when I first figured out the women live longer even then. So like the men would die and they would inherit all the money and then be looking for a new husband. I was like, okay, the women were really movers and shakers. But I don't think they did that. I don't think this author, I don't know why, but I'm just saying I think a lot has been said about them. And so, but when you talk about them, people will be like, well, you're looking at the elite. And I think it's good to like, no, it's not just like people with really big plantations, like who had white females who were slave owners. No, it's smaller slave owners too. We're not just talking about these expansive plantations. We're not talking about Monticello, darling. That's what we were talking about. So I think that's part of it. Fam. So, but yeah, that's what it is, fam. So thank you for calling in. I appreciate it.
No problem. Oh, come on. I didn't do my quote, but you know what? You need to get other callers. As always, love you, sis.
Thank you so much.
I'll get it to you next time.
Appreciate it. Take care, Marshall. I'm going to 917. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's going on?
Hi, Yvette. This is Alika from New York.
What's going on?
I can't believe I got through. So I wanted to get through the other day, and I was complaining like, there's something wrong with my phone. But anyway, I'm not going to be really quick, but I'll try to be really quick.
Okay.
I was so taken back by the book, but there was a caller who said that he listened to the book over the audio book in regards to completing the book instead of reading it. And I remember you were saying that it translated to him incorrectly. Like he kept saying that the author was saying that, like, taking up for the white women that own slaves.
Yeah.
So it does translate differently when you do listen to it on the audiobooks. I did both. And
I did both too.
Saying, I think, the thing about it is they would say all the atrocities that the white women slaves were doing, and then they would go back and say, well, she couldn't read, and then she fed the slaves, and then she protected the slaves and stuff like that. So I think every time the author
here's the thing. Both of the books said the same thing. Like they both had the same words in them. I read the book first, and then I went and listened to the majority of the audio. But I think the thing you have to keep in mind is this: a slave owner is a slave owner. I don't care whether one slave owner is kinder than the other slave owner, or whether one slave owner nurses you back to health, or whether one slave owner just really needed the money. Like, you're still a person who is owning me, and you are stripping me of my freedom. So the idea itself of female white women ownership, is in and of itself an exploitative in and of itself. And I think maybe the book, because you can go back through it with the book, right? You can sit with certain passages, right? So, because I didn't download the audiobook until like the day before, because I read the book itself in like 4 days, and I did download the audiobook just to see if anything I missed. And they maybe it didn't read necessarily that way to me. But they were all owners. See, that's the thing. They were all owners. Like, if you're nursing your slave back to health as an owner, or you're being somewhat kind, that's still because you want the labor and the capital that slave has to give. That's still not like, oh, they were such a nice slave master. There's no such thing.
Right. I agree with you totally. So I was debating with my friend, and she had the same experience the other caller had, and I had to explain to her that they are still atrocious in everything that they did. And it was a passage I couldn't remember, but there was a slave. She was 30 years old, and then she had a daughter who was 20, and then she had two other children, like 16 or something. And in my mind, I know how to add and subtract, and I kept saying, wait a minute, 30, 20, that means she had this first child at 10 years old. These people are diabolically evil. So I was just like, no matter what the author is saying in regards to they fed them and they nursed them back to health, they're just taking care of their investment. They sued their own husbands for the money. They would divorce them and sue them just because the husband tried to take their property or mishandle their slave property. It was mind-boggling. Like, I read it straight through, and then I listened to the audio book. I didn't stop not one time, because I think in undergraduate school they gave us the real information about slavery, where sometimes they don't in college. Mm-hmm. But it was just, I couldn't believe how terrible these women were. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm misspeaking. So these are the same women that are creating the pamphlets for Ku Klux Klan, that are knitting up the Ku Klux Klan hoods and stuff like that. So don't ever think that these same people didn't translate their information into their offspring to people that are now, in office, or doctors and lawyers, politicians, teachers, or what have you. I really don't trust any of them. I just get along with a lot of people, but I don't trust a lot of people.
Well, here's what I'll say. I think trust has to be earned. And even when you talk about group politics, what I'll say right now is the same thing I just said. I haven't seen any of these major groups come out and from reparations. I haven't seen any of them marching outside of Parchment, right? So you haven't earned that from me. You could, but you haven't. And it doesn't seem like it's important to you, and that's what we are.
Right. I agree, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. I have daughter who's watching you.
Oh, thank you.
We love you so much.
Thank you so much, fam.
I'm teaching her everything that I'm learning.
Good.
And I'm congratulations to everybody, the ADOS people. I feel so much pride when I tell people like I'm a part of it. I think I had emailed you on Twitter in regards to Tom Steyer. Am I pronouncing his name correctly?
I got so many, but I
Okay. Right. So it's just, I was telling his there was someone they had pamphlets and they were handing it out. He does have reparations on his official pamphlets.
I know.
But it says people of color, and it doesn't specifically say ADOS. I was like, he has to change that. He has to come with this. He needs to look.
Yeah, there you go. You tell him. You tell him. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, fam.
I'm not sure if he's gonna do it.
We don't know, fam. We don't know. Okay, thank you, fam. I appreciate it. But you never know. You never know what a politician's gonna do. But we gonna make it do what it do and do the best we can. But you never know what a politician's gonna do. 310, I'm coming to you. 310.
Hey, Yvette. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. What's going on, fam?
Okay, awesome. I got very little battery on my telephone, so I'm working with what I got.
All right, now.
So much to say. Yeah, this book was pretty heavy. It took me a long time to read.
Okay.
I had to keep putting it down. Plus, I have a white lady boss, so it was very hard to be reading this book and then go back to work and put up with her.
Don't y'all hurt nobody.
I'm trying to tell you, but yeah, you know, I think a point in the book that I want to bring up on page 74, they talk about how, you know, basically the whole page, white women were exonerated from their violence, their women's violence, and on that same page, they talk about how one mistress, she waited till her husband was away, and I guess a baby calf had urinated underneath the house. Mm-hmm. And she took and beat 2 of the children, boy slaves, to death. And when the husband, they had to run and get the husband and tell him what was happening. And he came back and he had to break the door down to make her stop. But it was too late anyway. Like the boys died within days of that.
Yep.
So it's just deep how, yeah, they, you know, they get to sit up in their lily white skin and pretend that they're so, you know, dainty and pure and innocent, and that's not the case. Mm. And today, actually, before I was at, like, I want to speak about, like, one of the callers just before. She was saying how she didn't know where her people are from. Well, I just happened to be at the Family Search Center here in Los Angeles at the Mormon Church, and I encourage all of y'all listening to find those churches in your cities, because they have a beautiful library with awesome computers and software, and it's free. It's free if you actually go in, and it's not just their handle. It's Ancestry. It's like 4 or 5 different other ones that you can use at the same time simultaneously for free. Mm. So if you want to know about your family, please go and find that out. And so today, as I was digging, why did I find out that we related to R.J. Reynolds aluminum foil?
The monies.
Yes, ma'am.
You didn't get the monies.
Well, at least now I know. Now I know whose door to go knock on.
No, they're going to release the hounds. They're going to release the hounds.
Well, release them, because, yeah, you know what? Y'all owe us some money. That's a huge company. Aluminum foil, Reynolds Wrap. Wow. And yeah, you know, it's deep. You know, to speak on my boss, she's very inappropriate. You know, she asked me to do all sorts of ridiculous stuff. And the latest shenanigans, she asked me to babysit for her. And I actually, when I was listening to your show Thursday night, my husband and I got into it. He's an immigrant, y'all. Oh my God. Anyway, I'm married to Ghanaian, and he heard me listening to this and talking to the phone, and yeah, and he was like, yeah, but you went and you did it. You went and you babysat for her. So, yeah, and I was like, look, and I looked at her, I was like, well, yeah, fool, because we need the money. You know, she's paying $30 an hour. You damn skippy, I'm gonna go babysit. But it's just.
I'm looking at the chat. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to figure out what people. Because we're gonna have to find somebody to do breaking brown relationship counseling. I done heard a lot of stuff on this show. But go on, Carl. I'm gonna let you finish up.
I'm trying to tell you, that was a huge fight for us. Like it started. Look, I'm in the street. That was, what was that, Thursday? Here we are Saturday, and I'm still running around like I'm not going home just yet. Because he done got on my nerves. You
can't run from it, family. You can't run from it. You have to meet your mate, and have the conversation.
I know, but I don't know what to do. Like when he hears me talking about this, or and because y'all are on constantly. If it's not you, it's Tone, or I'm listening to something.
But we're not in opposition to. We're talking about in terms of immigrants masking our failure and that sort of thing. We're not B1. We're not just like, oh, y'all don't bring nothing to the table. Right. We're not them. We're not those people. So we're not, from Ghanaian goddess to all our fam. We're not like that. So his issue though sounds like something that you made. He believes that you contributed to. I'm not. Whether or not you did, I don't know. But that's another thing. Did he have a problem with you babysitting the white child? I'm just asking.
No, he has a problem with me complaining about it after the fact, and I'm just like, look, first of all, I want to keep my job. okay? Because you don't know the repercussions of saying no, because I don't know what's on her mind or what she's gonna do. And I didn't feel like I had to, but here we are talking about this book, so you all know, yeah, I felt like I had to.
Okay. Let me play counselor for a second, though, right? Let me play. This is not my hat, but I'm gonna just go put on hat for a second. Let me play counselor for a second. I understand exactly why you did it, because you felt like that could be weaponized against you at your job if you had not done it. So I understand why you did it, right? I understand why you did it. However, you made a choice. I'm not saying your choice was a bad choice. I'm not saying that your choice was a bad choice at all. Depending on who your boss is, that may have been a good choice that allows you to keep your job. You still made a decision as a grown-up to do it. And now you are maybe consistently bringing it home as if you were not involved in that decision. And as a mate, I have to listen to that as if the decision did not involve you. Maybe he's feeling that like there was not enough ownership there in terms of what you did. I'm just asking. I'm just putting it out there. I'm just trying to make y'all a happy home. Shooting them a little bit of help.
No, you know what it was? It was me. It was, thank you, Yvette. I appreciate it. No, but it was more so just me drawing a parallel to the book. Okay. Like, look, this stuff was going on way back when, and it ain't stopped.
Okay.
It ain't stopped. It just keeps going on and on and on. On New Year's Eve, we did a huge, it's because the costume shop, vintage costume shop. We did a huge show, and she had me like 12 hours the day before. So, I was a little bit late getting there the day of, and she had to get her hands dirty. And I'm telling you, she was mad. She was hopping mad. But guess what? The next show we did, we did it via my suggestion to make it easier, and the only way she would have done that is if she hadn't got her hands dirty, she still would have been trying to make me unpack and pack and just schlep and just do all this extra unnecessary stuff because she knew she could will her power over me because I'm her employee type of stuff. Okay. It's weird. And then one last thing, because y'all appreciate this. So one of my coworkers, she's from she's El Salvadorian. So it's me and El Salvadorian, and we in there, this white lady, and she was showing me some video of Madonna and all these African singers that she be running around. And Madonna's another example, y'all. Have y'all noticed that?
Okay, caller, stick to your point. Caller, stick to your point. We got to wrap it up. Stick to your last point.
Okay. Anyway, my colleague started speaking about reparations, and the moment we started talking about reparations, and then we had to stop. Like, honey, white lady came up and was like, "Oh, we need to change. We need to get back on task. We need to stop this conversation." Like, it was just really funny how the moment we started speaking about reparations, but we couldn't have that conversation.
I understand. Thank you, fam.
Real.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate it. I appreciate your call. I think, let me just say this. Relationship guru hat, and I'm not. Like, here's the thing it's a balancing act, okay, in relationships or ADOS, immigrant, whatever relationship you're in, right? In the sense that you have to show up for your partner and make your partner feel understood. Like, that's part of the responsibility, right? Of showing up for that person and making sure that, that you hear them and you empathize with them. Another side that, I'm not saying that she did any of this. I'm not saying that he did any of this. I'm saying the other side of that too is that your partner is going to give you, or should give you, a listening ear. The other side of that is that you can't abuse that listening ear and just and be on this all the time to where all we talk about is this. All we talk about is this thing. We don't talk about us. We don't talk about going nowhere. We don't talk about what we enjoy about each other. It's just like, I'm a dumping ground. So there has to be a balancing act. I'm not talking specifically, just made me think about it in terms of just ADOS life, and like there has to be a balance between, yes, we have to share, we have to unload. You have to be that place. But nobody wants to be the thing you just unload in all the time. It has to be some other stuff there too. Just my 2 cents. Take it or leave it. Anyway, fam, I am going now. 314. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. My name is Big Mac. I'm calling from Harlem, New York. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I am a long-time listener. I attended the conference, and I really enjoyed this book, and I wanted to call in and just share some passages with the family.
Appreciate you, fam. What'd you think?
All right, so Okay, so page 64, it says, then Horry recalled that when anybody steal rice, the overseer beat them. His owner, Miss Bessie, would cry and say, let them have rice. My rice, my nigga. Then if you go
Was that the potato? Was that the potato one?
No, that's page 67. That's the next one. And it says, when Joe High was a young boy, he strolled through a potato patch, dug up a spud out the ground, and asked the white woman who served his mistress cook to prepare it for him to eat. The woman marched the boy to the with the end of potatoes to the owner, Clara Griffin, and accused him of stealing it, telling Griffin, look here, missus, Joe has stolen taters. He has his tater, here is the tater he stole. She probably expected a different response from the one she received. Instead of punishing Joe High, Griffin replied, Joe belongs to me, the tater belongs to me. Take it back and cook it for him. So that really just displays to me how, you know, what the chapter says, that these white women, they were their own disciplinarians, they were their own, they would wield their own authority in their houses. And it didn't matter if you were black, if you were white, if you were male, if you were female. They were the head hens in that house, and they made it known for everybody. And another part that I wanted to share was the part that really broke my heart was there was a slave mistress, and it was the part, it said the enslaved children on the farm did not receive any meat. This is page 73, because they did not work. Barbie's wife exploited the fact that her slaves were near starvation conditions and developed a drastically form of food-related torment. Her former slave remembered. Once a man brought some old hog heads and pieces of fresh meat that the old mistress had in a barrel to make soap with. I remember that, yeah. And the things were just floating on top. She got mad because the grown folk slaves wouldn't eat it. She give it to us children. And of course, we was glad to eat it because it was meat. And we ate it till it made us sick. And they couldn't give us any more. Mister, the man who given the meat, came by and found out what she done. And he said, I just brought that meat because I thought you might want to make soap. I didn't know you was going to make nobody eat it. I wouldn't give that to my dog. It was just, again, this common theme of starvation in our ancestors' history. And this common theme of always not having enough, always wanting more. And I think what the other caller said when she spoke about a book that she recommended, I've read that book. She said it's taken her 6 months to get through it. But The Delectable Negro, Human Consumption and Homoeroticism Within U.S. Slave Culture.
Somebody just said that. Did somebody just say that? Somebody just, what was the name? Okay.
Yeah, she said that it was taking her 6 months to get through it. But I got through it. And so I would say if it's hard for the family, that book, The Delectable Negro, is like a PhD level course of this. Because I have to say that Stephanie did a great job. It's a great read. But this is really just the tip of the iceberg of what we literally went through and the trauma that is still baked into our DNA. All of this still has an effect on us today.
Well,
the things that these women,
you know what? You know what, Carla? We should, at some point, there needs to be more research in epigenetics. I'm seeing a lot of stuff like that, which says that kind of trauma is buried in your, like you said, your genetics, your DNA. People need to really do research in that, and because I think a lot of of whether it's blood pressure, diabetes, a lot of the diseases that we have is kind of baked in there, like that, and I think people need to do research in there, because I saw some research that was done in terms of Holocaust victims. There needs to be a lot of ADOS research in terms of epigenetics, in terms of what the real health cost has been to us.
I agree, and I think that this book helps open that door, and the other book, The Delectable Negro, Vincent Woodward, it slams it wide open. I mean, he builds a lot off of the Harriet Jacobs slave narrative in there, and he really gets down to the psychology and also the psyche. He goes even further and what these white women would think about how they would take on like the literal persona of white men and creep into these slave bedrooms at night and speak to them in the voices of these white men to wield their power and assert their authority. Like, it's creepy. Now, that's the horror movie series or whatever of like, but it's American history. And I think that it's important that we know that. And like the other callers said, I phrase it in the sense of we're now in the stage of this movement where we're actively invoking our ancestors. And when we begin to invoke them in such a way, we have to realize that there's a cost to that. But the cost is what we need to help propel us forward. That's how we grow that wind at our backs. We have to be able to see, and we're seeing their names and we're speaking their names, and it's not in vain. We're waking up, and they're even becoming more real. And I think that we need that right now. And the other part that I wanted to share was that the theme of starvation and the theme of how white women sexualize our bodies for profit. And that was shown very well throughout this book by Stephanie. And I think on page 83, it says, on any given day, white women and girls could witness white men and women committing violent acts upon nude and partially exposed bodies of enslaved people in their households and their fields. And it says in the middle of that page, the slave-holding household was a place of coerce, production, and reproduction, racial and sexual exploitation, the physical and psychological violence. And I think that that was paramount to what this book was really showing, that these women who now, with the Me Too movement and all these other things, are playing the victim card. No, you are the culprit. You are the mastermind behind the atrocity. If anything, and they're like someone else said, you are the co-conspirator. This was not, a secondary or tertiary role. You were primary in this act. But this is the last part I wanted to share. It's page 97. This stood out to me, and I'm surprised no other callers mentioned this passage yet, but it really speaks to the resilience, again, that we had to have this double consciousness in a sense. Yes, I was the meat, and at the same time, I had to have the mind and the mentality of the butcher. And it says here in the middle of the page, on page 97, it is crucial to recognize that as human property that was exchanged, bought, sold, hired, and parceled out among white Southerners, enslaved people were not simply objects of sale or potential liquidation. They took an active interest in the market process to which they were subjected and acquired extensive financial knowledge as a consequence. The slave market in all its aspects was a pervasive feature of enslaved African Americans' daily lives and their direct and indirect encounters. And I'm going to say that again. They are direct and indirect encounters with the three dimensions of the slave market economy: slave auctions and sales, inheritance and debt collection, and self-purchase. Offered opportunities to learn about credit, debt, and contracts, allowed them to engage in financial negotiation, and taught them to develop strategies for fiscal management. They calculated their own value, established a price for their freedom, decided terms of payment, and worked until they reached their financial goal. These financial calculations and dealings challenge us to rethink the intellectual economic relationships between slavery and freedom for African Americans in the 19th century and the roles white slave-owning women played in the process. Then right on 99 it says, they established and negotiated the terms upon which they could purchase and secure their freedom, drawing up upon the same information owners use to calculate the profit of a potential slave sale, skill, character, and sex, and appraised market value. Enslaved people bought themselves and their loved ones, and thereby ensured that they would never have to enter the slave market again. So again, we had to be the slab of meat, but think like the butcher that was filleting the meat. So this whole ideal of double consciousness that we always had to reckon with. And then I can't remember the part, but the other part that stood out to me was about how we actually had to take on this mentality. When we stepped on the auction block, I have to really now go into a mental place, where I can't show I have the soaps, or I have to get up here and step and fetch so I can get a good price. So I can go to hopefully somewhere with somebody who would do me right and all these other.
Well, not even do me right. If you don't act right and get a good price, and you go back to the master and you're not sold, then they punish you for not putting up against yours. Like, you get punished for, like, you're supposed to. I'm telling you. I told you what to do. I told you how to act. If you don't get sold, or nobody offered you a good price, then I punish you for, like, not doing good enough. Like, I'm trying to sell you, and you didn't put up a good enough act. So.
Right.
Thank you, Carla.
Yeah, so I thank you so much.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate it. I'm going to take probably a couple more calls, and then we're going to be out for the night. I'm not going to get through the queue because everybody's fired up. It's probably not going to happen. But we're going to get to a couple more calls. So I'm going now to 240. 240, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? 240?
Hello?
Hey, 240, what's going on? What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing? I'm Latarius Brown, calling out of Hagerstown, Maryland.
What's going on?
Hey, yeah, I checked out the book. I listened to it a couple of times on the Audible.
Okay.
And what struck out to me was the part when it was talking about how the kids was being treated and how they catered to the kids. And the reason why that struck out to me was because when I was playing basketball, when I was in like the 7th grade, I had a black coach, and he came to me. And he said, listen, he said, man, you smart, but you got to share time with these kids or their parents is going to complain. You know, and I was a kid. I didn't understand it at the time, so I just went along with it. The next year, he did the same thing to me. And I didn't think about it at the time. You know, I just went along, and what was crazy was, after that, they never played basketball again. It was crazy. And then I thought about the book, and I was just like, wow, the catering is real. You know, it's real. That's all I was going to say. Thank you. I love you and Tone and what y'all do.
I appreciate
y'all.
Appreciate you. Thank you. I'm going to the next call, going to 773. What's your name? Where you calling from? And what's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing? This is Mona from the South Side of Chicago. How you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm good, sir. I'm going to be really fast. My mother, I'm a young boomer. I'm 55 years old.
Okay.
My mother told me in the 7th grade. Of course, I didn't understand. I talk really fast, so I'm trying to go through it really fast. My mother told me when I was in 7th grade, she said, always remember, white women are the most dangerous gender on the planet. Now, I'm in the 7th grade. I didn't comprehend that until I started getting older. One thing I learned about black people, we are a traumatized race of people. And one thing I don't think any callers have kind of pointed on, Dr. Rogers was brave. She basically did a meta-analysis on all of these scholars and these historians, and she examined all this data, and she just kind of came back and said, you know what, this is not good. She examined, she argued, she did extensions, she did revisions. She was really brave at what she did when she exposed them. And then she also said in the book that a lot of those scholars and historians, they kind of like framed the narrative for slavery all across America. You get that? They framed slavery, and she just kind of she just changed it all around. Like, no, this is not what it is. And the reason why I don't think she got a lot of flack yet is because it's not exposed. But with Adolf, is going to be mainly exposed about that. So I want you to know I love you and Tone.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate you.
I'm coming to a conference.
Oh, wonderful.
My next meeting in Chicago, and I want you to know I think you guys are great, okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, fam. I sure do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, family. I appreciate that. I'm going to another call. I'm going to 4123, because I have two 412s. 4123, I'm coming to you. Hey, what's going on, Carla?
Hi, Breaking Brown family.
Hey.
I'm thinking that's me.
That's you?
Yep. Okay. Oh wow. I'm not an ADOS and I'm not American, but I'm an ally.
Oh,
and I want to first of all just let you know how much I appreciate this group. I've been following you for 3, 4, 5 years maybe now, and I learned so much. And every time you think you learn just about everything, you learn something else, and I appreciate you all so very much. This book really drove something home for me that my mind is blown about how everybody else's mind is blown. Especially the discussion of this book really brought home how the history of this country is so suppressed and so manipulated in this country. And to me, it was so inconceivable how everybody was so surprised to learn about what was written in this book. Like, how would you believe in the first place that the women of a particular nation that practiced, whatever policies it practiced, were somehow not part of it? Of course they were. Even, let's just say, even if they weren't actively involved, you're certainly a benefactor, even if you're not a slave owner. If your husband is, what feeds you?
Absolutely.
So to me, that just kind of really see, in context, I'm German.
Okay.
I was born and raised and educated in Germany.
Okay.
If I apply this to my particular situation, it would have never dawned on anybody to say, well, that was all the Nazis, that was all just the German men. The women, they're just women, they're mothers and, nurturing. But wouldn't have even occurred to anyone to draw a conclusion like that. So, and I noticed this, like I said, I've been studying this particular history now for the last at least 5 to 6 years. And I appreciate the knowledge I get from this particular group, like you would not believe. And I know this may sound a little cheesy, but I feel, you guys, you saved my soul.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it is so important. How can this all not be known? And I tell you why it is so suppressed, and I tell you why it is so manipulated. It is because it's still ongoing. If you bring this all out in the open, you can't. You got to stop playing those games. But they're not. They never stopped. And you said this many times. Every new generation of American governance found a new way to enslave the African people of this country. It never stopped. So my children went to school here. I've been here 30 years. It'll be 30 years this year that I've been living here. And my children were raised here. They went to school here. And it never stopped to shock me how little they learned about their own history. They spend a lot more time on the Holocaust than they did on the American history, the real history. So it's up to us. It is up to, and see, there is so much that is entailed when you don't. Education is king. If you don't know this stuff, and this goes for both groups in this country, then how are you going to rectify it? How are you going to make good? How are you going to get people to understand why reparations are an absolute must? And how it has never. I mean, I talk to people a lot. I spread the word. I do what little I can do. But I always get these reactions like, well, my dad came here from Italy, and my family comes here from Ireland, and they were treated shitty, and they blah, blah, blah. But then you have to go into the whole generational wealth, and thank goodness for this group. So you have arguments, you have data to come back to these people. But even then, they're like, oh, well, I've got nothing to do with it. But let me tell you something. Being born and raised in Germany, I certainly had nothing to do with the Holocaust. And actually, my family and most families I know didn't. However, and here's the significant difference. Once you are sufficiently able to read, your basic education, so in about 7th grade, when it is deemed that you're now also emotionally mature enough, history is being taught. And if you would not believe how many people don't believe that, but I went to school there. So all literature, it's not just in history, the history lesson, but in German, in English, you get literature and you read about the Holocaust, you read about how it started, what went on, what was done, who did what, but everything. So by the time you're an adult, it's a given that you're now starting to work, and you know very well that part of your tax dollar goes to pay reparations to these people that were wronged by your country. Nobody questions this. Nobody questions it at all. So that's the one thing, and it strikes me again and again when I see the discussions and when I talk to people that the main culprit, the huge, biggest problem here is ignorance. And I'm not saying this like as an excuse, but it is a huge factor. If people don't know, the understanding is missing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, but I think that's very intentional too, because even the way they write history books, yeah, like, well, the slaves weren't treated so bad and they kind of had it good. They write history books with the goal a lot of the times of being, let's present this picture as if it wasn't so bad, and so nobody is inclined to kind of do redress, and you know, so yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's very true. It's been romanticized. I mean, it's unbelievable. And like I said, being German, I always, bring this on to the people. Like, imagine me making some kind of like Gone with the Wind kind of type of thing about a concentration camp. You know what I mean?
Yeah, never happened.
Blows my mind.
Never happened. Yeah.
Nobody would even think about it. You can't throw a rock far enough within Germany to not get some kind of a memorial or some kind of reminder, and let's never forget, and that's fine, and whatever. This is not the place to discuss that particular history, which is also not always properly represented. However, here in the United States, the history of the American descendants of slaves is not represented at all. That not at all.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, we got to build our own schools, teach our own kids, but teach the other people too. Just teach, and that's why I appreciate you and Tone so much, because that's what you do, and that is what is needed. So thank you, and thank you to the Ados family.
Oh, thank you,
Bye-bye,
We appreciate the allies. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you bringing that into context, because I've never lived, of course, in Germany. So I appreciate that context from someone who has lived in Germany. I think the first thing that we do, though, in terms of like what she said is true in terms of the schools and the education system. So it puts it in a certain place where nobody questions the reparations that are paid to the Jewish community, because everybody knows, okay, they're rightfully paid. This is what happened. I think the beginning of what needs to happen, though, is that, we educate ourselves, because when you educate yourself, then you know what the school isn't doing. Then you know what's wrong with the school board. Then you know what's being left out of the curriculum. And when everybody around, and it's no good if you the only one who know it. If the rest of your community don't know nothing, you just running around by yourself. The community needs to know too, as an ADOS community, because then we're all doing activism together, saying, yeah, I'm with you. I know this is wrong. This curriculum is wrong. We're going to go up there. We're going to do this together. We got kids, and these kids learn the wrong thing. But it begins with educating ourselves. It begins with us reading the books and us having the knowledge, and us passing down not only the knowledge, but us passing down the thirst for knowledge and the hunger for knowledge and the respect for our own ancestors. I think that's where it begins, right? And so, I think that's a good point to end the show, fam. There's no way we're gonna get through all the calls tonight. This was a book that kind of educated everybody, but tore everybody apart at the same time. I want to thank everybody who called in. I appreciate it. It was a powerful read, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it. I'm sure we'll continue to kind of interweave it with conversations that we have going forward. Just not this evening. So this is the end of the part 2 show, family. The end of the part 2 show. We will be back again on our regularly scheduled time and days. Before you go, please hit that like button for me. If you don't do anything else, hit that like button for me. If you want to donate, you can go to donatebrown.com or patreon.com/ycarnell if you want to. But please hit that like button. Go to subscribe to brown.com too if you have not, and give me your email address. Hit that bell if you haven't hit that bell to make sure you get notifications. If you have not subscribed, make sure you subscribe and take care of that for me, fam. Until next time, I am out, and thank you for showing up for part 2 of the ADOS Breaking Brown, the book club. We will do it again, fam. We will do it again.